What's up, guys? This is Chris from DraftDashboard.com.
Here are my DFS picks for NFL Week 1 Sleeper Picks.
These picks apply for DraftKings and FanDuel. Before I get started, please drop a like on this video and hit that red subscribe button
And hit that bell icon
so you don't miss our new videos.
In this video, I'm going to give you some of my top DFS Sleeper Picks,
Super low priced and low ownership players that could crush value this week and give your lineup an advantage over the field. These are risky plays, meant for large tournaments only. Don't go all in on any of these guys. They are high risk, high reward picks. And if you stick around to the very end of this video, we'll use the Draft Dashboard tools to make a DFS lineup using the picks we just made.
Okay guys, NFL Week 1, my sleeper pick at the quarterback position is Gardner Minshew from the Jacksonville Jaguars playing the Indianapolis Colts, who have a middle-of-the-pack defense overall, but they gave up the 10th most fantasy points to opposing quarterbacks last year. Gardner Minshew averaged 17.7 fantasy points per game on the season, getting an average of 4.8 rush attempts per game. He's only going to be about 2% owned here. He scored 26 fantasy points in the last game of the season last year, and he's projected at 17 fantasy points here in Week 1. He's $5,800 DraftKings salary and $900 more on FanDuel. Vegas thinks there's going to be 45 points scored in this game, and they have the Jaguars trailing by 8. So the reason that I think this guy's a good sleeper pick is because he can put points on the board, and they could be trailing the whole game, forced to throw the ball a ton. So this guy could throw a ton of passes here tonight, throw for a couple of touchdowns. You're going to save a ton of salary with this guy. Opens it up for your running back studs, your wide receiver studs. You're getting them at low ownership. It's a good matchup, a good game script here. So I like Gardner Minshew here versus the Indianapolis Colts. The other guy who's going to be pretty low ownership at 3% ownership is Jimmy Garoppolo from the San Francisco 49ers playing the Arizona Cardinals, who have the second worst defense overall, and they gave up the absolute most fantasy points to opposing quarterbacks. Jimmy Garoppolo averaged 17.2 fantasy points per game on the season last year. He got an average of 2.9 rush attempts per game. And like I said, he's only going to be about 3% owned here. He's projected at 17.7 fantasy points here in Week 1. He's also $5,800 DraftKings salary, but he's $1,500 more on FanDuel. So I'd probably go with Gardner Minshew on FanDuel. I like Jimmy Garoppolo on DraftKings. And Vegas thinks there's going to be 48 points scored in this game. So a high-scoring game. They have the 49ers favored by 6.5. Fantastic matchup here. So I like Jimmy Garoppolo here versus the Arizona Cardinals. Okay, my sleeper pick at the running back position. He is a little bit higher owned than I like to give out for these sleeper picks, but he might not be on your radar. So I'm going to go ahead and give you guys this play. I like Chris Thompson from the Jacksonville Jaguars playing the Indianapolis Colts, who have a middle-of-the-pack defense overall. And although they've been pretty good versus opposing running backs, Chris Thompson averaged 8.5 fantasy points per game on the season last year, which isn't a fantastic average per game, but he's going to be involved in the passing game. So on DraftKings, where you have the full point per reception, I think that favors Chris Thompson, who got an average of 5.3 pass targets per game last year, only 3.4 rush attempts per game, but he should get between 8 to 10, maybe more touches. So he is going to be about 9% owned here because he's only $4,000 DraftKings salary and $900 more on FanDuel. So he's a player that you can play to give yourself some salary relief to fit in those guys like Christian McCaffrey or Michael Thomas. So at $4,000 DraftKings salary, he doesn't need a whole lot here to hit value. Vegas thinks there's going to be 45 points scored in this game with the Jacksonville Jaguars trailing by 8. And because they're going to be throwing the ball a lot, trying to play from behind, Chris Thompson could get a ton of targets this game. So I think he's a sneaky play here. So I like Chris Thompson here versus the Indianapolis Colts.
Real quick, guys, I got great news. For a limited time, we're offering a full 30-day trial to Draft Dashboard. You can try all the tools for NFL, MLB is still going, NBA is right around the corner. This is a great time to get in and try everything for 1 month. The tools are all about saving research time. You can see the last 3 games, the fantasy points per game, the targets they got per game, so you can see how involved they are in the offense, the rushes they got per game. Seeing all this stuff on one screen helps you save time and make better picks. Oh, and if you're tired of doing research every day, we just added a cheat sheet that shows hand-picked plays for the slate. No confusing stat lines, no headaches, just a simple cheat sheet that shows the absolute best players for your lineups.
And just a quick mention here, guys. Don't forget about Boston Scott. Miles Sanders is marked out. He's been ruled out for the Philadelphia Eagles. Now he is going to be about 22% owned here in week 1. So this isn't really a sleeper pick, but he might not have been on your radar. You might have missed that injury news. So just take a look at Boston Scott. He's only $4,800 DraftKings salary, 100 more on FanDuel. He's going to be getting plenty of work here. He should be in the running back 1 position here. There's going to be Vegas thinks there's going to be 42 points scored in this game, with the Philadelphia Eagles favored by 5.5, and they're playing the Washington Redskins, who had the 4th worst defense overall last year and gave up the 2nd or 3rd most fantasy points to opposing running backs. So I like Boston Scott here versus the Washington football team. Okay, let's take a look at the wide receiver position. My sleeper pick at the wide receiver position is Hunter Renfrow from the Las Vegas Raiders playing the Carolina Panthers, who had the 6th worst defense overall last year. They were middle of the pack defending opposing wide receivers. Hunter Renfrow averaged 10.7 fantasy points per game on the season, getting an average of 5.5 pass targets per game, and he's only going to be about 1% owned here. Now, take a look at his last 2 games of the season. He scored 25 and 27 fantasy points off of 9 and 9 targets in each of those games. So he's only projected at 9 fantasy points here tonight, but we saw that he's got that 20 plus fantasy point upside, and he's only $4,500 DraftKings salary and $700 more on FanDuel. And Vegas thinks this is going to be a high scoring game, projected at 48 points here, with the Las Vegas Raiders favored by 3. So this is a nice matchup. So I like Hunter Renfrow here versus the Carolina Panthers. Okay, moving on to the tight end position. So this guy's not super low salary, but he is low ownership. It's really low ownership here, and I think this guy's in a fantastic spot. So my sleeper pick at the tight end position is Jared Cook from the New Orleans Saints playing the Tampa Bay Bucks, who had the 9th worst defense overall and gave up the 7th most fantasy points to opposing tight ends. Jared Cook averaged 12 fantasy points per game on the season last year, getting an average of 4.6 targets per game. So I'm not sure why he's only projected here to be about 1% owned. And last year, the last 3 games of the season, he scored 10, 12, and 23 fantasy points, projected at 10 fantasy points here in week 1. He's $5,500 DraftKings salary and $400 more on FanDuel. And Vegas thinks there's going to be 47.5 points scored in this game, with the Saints favored by 3.5. So I like Jared Cook here versus the Tampa Bay Bucks. Now, if you're looking to save a ton of salary here at the tight end position, take a look at Ian Thomas from the Carolina Panthers playing the Las Vegas Raiders, who gave up the 7th worst defense overall last year and gave up the 2nd most fantasy points to opposing tight ends. Ian Thomas only averaged 2.2 fantasy points per game on the season, only got 2 targets per game last year, but he's the first string tight end for the Carolina Panthers with a fantastic matchup here versus the Raiders. He's only going to be about 3% owned, projected at 8.2 fantasy points here in week 1, and he's only 3,400 DraftKings salary and 1,700 more on FanDuel. So he's a low ownership, low price tight end with a fantastic matchup who should be more involved than he was last year. So I like Ian Thomas here versus the Las Vegas Raiders.
If you want to try all these daily fantasy tools for yourself, click the link in the description below this video or just go to draftdashboard.com. You can use our DFS lineup optimizer to build quality lineups using our picks and your own custom player pool. Click the link in the description below this video and try all these daily fantasy tools right now. Thanks so much for watching. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel and hit that bell icon so you can get instant updates whenever we post a new video. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed this video, please smickety smash that like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Oh, and please comment below with your favorite player for this NFL slate. I love to hear what you guys have to think. Thanks again and good luck.